let's talk about this reveal, Renegades. We had the Vidoc, so I'm already off the rip going to suggest literally everyone to go watch the Vidoc first before watching any more of this video. Let me cover myself again. Go watch the Vidoc. I've linked it in the description. Go watch the Vidoc. If you do any, like, make sure you have some context. People have been begging and pleading for another Vidoc. They're like, we're tired of the streams. Give us a Vidoc. They made a Vidoc. The Vidoc was very good. I know something that people were very concerned about very early on when we first got this preview was like, you know, they're just making Star Wars Destiny. Like, then Luke Skywalker's going to show up and save the day. And I, like, as someone who is not very attached to Star Wars in a significant way whatsoever, I could definitely feel still very much a Destiny presence in this experience. This does not feel like, you know, and then Darth Vader shows up. Like, yes, obviously there's going to be a bunch of parallels to, you know, certain Star Wars things and Praxic Order and Jedi and all that kind of stuff. It does not feel like I'm walking into, like, you know, Jedi Survivor or something like that. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like that at all. We got some insight into like a couple of the activities, which one of them seems to be some sort of extraction type mode where you can go around and loot up as much as possible, and then you need to escape after doing a bunch of objectives. I don't think it's going to be like exactly like a Tarkov thing, you know, to that degree or anything like that. I think it's going to be a much more casual Destiny-ified type experience. But then they also alluded to the fact that they might, or they're going to have some sort of a mode where you can invade people that are doing these extractions, but it's optional. So, like, you can queue for, like, hey, we don't mind being invaded and we want to fight off an invader. And you as an invader can queue into something that I assume is like, I want to invade somebody. But if you don't want to participate with that, you can just do a normal mode. Yeah, more Helldivers-y type thing. You could just do like a normal Helldivers type thing where you're like, we're going in, no one's invading us, we don't have to worry about it, and we're just going to do our thing and then leave. So it's seasonal activity-esque, and this is something that I feel like has been very missed in something like Edge of Fate, where Edge of Fate is like, we did the campaign and there's a few things to do on Kepler and you had these side missions, and then you have like the Civ that shows up every, like, I don't know, 4 hours or like whatever it is, right? But like most of our time spent in the game for the past, what's going to be a couple of months now, has been all stuff that we have played before. There hasn't been like that seasonal activity, that seasonal loop that we have usually had, for better or for worse, right? We haven't had that for Edge of Fate. And it's like, we didn't have the Nether, we didn't have our Tomb of Elders, we didn't have our Battlegrounds and this and whatever. So this is something that I feel like is kind of getting us back to that regular cadence of like, hey, an expansion comes out or a season comes out or a thing comes out, and then there's actually things to go do in that season or that expansion, right? They showed like what? They're going to have 3 different maps for this, multiple objectives, different times a day. So already I'm like, there's something to engage with that will hopefully give me levels that is new to the game, right? Even if it is like, oh, you're still probably gonna be doing XYZ objectives, some stuff that we're pretty used to, right? Move the thing over here, stand on the plate, blah, blah, blah. But at least like we're in a new setting where we have these, you know, what is it? These renegade abilities, right? They said like we have 9 abilities with like 7 different upgrades to them. Like one of them's like you can drop a Cabal friggin' drop pod on enemies' heads, right? Another one is, I'll just like play this in the background. Another one's like you can summon one of the vehicles that's like a ATST or whatever for the Cabal, which, by the way, I think the Cabal look really, really cool. So there's going to be some ways to, like, you know, enhance that gameplay to some kind of a degree. So this is something that has been incredibly, incredibly missed, because right now it just feels like all we do is just play the Portal. Yeah, like I clapped when I saw it. All we do is like play the Portal, which is just older pieces of content. And I feel like that has absolutely led to some of the fatigue with the game, is not feeling like we are participating in something new on the day-to-day. What else we got? We have like this outpost. What does it say? Tharsis Junction or outpost. Yeah, no, Tharsis Outpost. Tharsis Junction. It was a junction and then it was an outpost. I'm trying to find the, okay, I think it's like right here. I thought that, yeah, okay. So we have this, which is like, there's a bunch of different enemy factions, or sorry, not enemy factions, just like factions. And you have like the Vex, or we'll start with the Fallen, this like biker gang with like crazy, you know, pastel colors and all this kind of stuff that like don't worship like servitors and machines and all that. And you have like this cabal, was it the Totality Division, I think is what it was called. And then you have the Vex dudes, which I'm probably the most interested in, is the Vex that have become sentient. Like that's a big first for the game, right? So I'm interested to see, like, you know, how much are they realistically going to play a role in like the day-to-day. I'm sure it's just like some reputation vendors, like, oh, if you do something with one faction, you lose rep in another faction, something like that. And maybe each faction has their own set of unique rewards, and you're probably going to cycle through all of them, right? But just like even something like this, like part of something that I liked about the landing zone in Edge of Fate, it's literally called Caldera, is that like at least there were other NPCs around and like things felt a little more alive. And like here, I mean, like you're literally at, you know, like a criminal outpost, and it's just like it feels like there's things happening and people and I don't know, you call them people, creatures and all this kind of stuff that makes it actually feel like we're living in some kind of a world versus going to some destination and there's nothing there, right? So I think this is cool. I'm interested to learn more about, like, I think I'm the most interested in the Vex, how they've become sentient and they're all, you know, humanoid. I don't know, freaking humanoid. I'm interested to see how that plays into some of the story. We didn't get too much on the story. Not that I was really expecting them to reveal a whole lot, which was the social space, Tharsis Junction or Outpost. I would assume that it is. I'd be surprised if it's not. I'll put it that way. I'd be surprised if it's not. I think those were like the big things. Was the activity. We have this like Star Wars inspired story. Again, I think the Cabal look really cool. Blog confirms Tharsis is a social hub. Okay, so there you go. And hopefully there's like, you know, Postmaster, Vault, you know, all the bells and whistles that we're used to in the tower. That'd be cool. Speaking of Vault, they are doing some Vault updates. Which infographic was it? Boom. More Vault space, improved sorting and filtering. Unfortunately, they didn't show anything about this. I'm guessing we're getting like 100 more spaces, Vault space-wise. Improved sorting and filtering. We were literally talking about this right before the stream started, how we have literally 0 tools for the Vault. You're not going to be able to hold everything ever, but to more easily navigate your Vault would be a very nice thing to have. So I'm interested to see what kind of sorting and filtering changes are going to show up. I'm actually surprised they didn't show some sort of a preview for this. So we're just going to have to wait. I think they said in the coming weeks they're going to have more. So we're just going to have to wait on that. Am I reading the trailers right in thinking Renegades is going to have a similar gameplay loop to Helldivers? So the activity does kind of feel like that based on just like some brief descriptions that they have given, and a lot of people in the chat have said like it kind of feels like that. But until like we get a more like typical, you know, non-marketing, you know, non-Vidoc kind of POV of what it looks like, I'm holding any judgment on that. But that's kind of the vibe that it's giving off. Less so extraction shooter, like you might be used to with like a Tarkov kind of situation, and maybe leaning more towards like a Helldivers kind of thing. So those were a lot of the just like Renegades like story, big feature moments. Then we had they had a bunch of discussion points about some other stuff coming later. A lot of like leveling updates, but these are things that we have spoken about already. I don't think there was many things that were new that they discussed here. This was more for like the people who haven't been paying attention to all the article drops or watching videos or watching streams, stuff like that. I don't think there were too many new things. So like most of the couch talk after they showed the Vidoc was kind of like summing up some things from the Vidoc. And then, yeah, they kind of went into a bunch of the things that we've discussed already, where they're doing buffs for the portal. They're trying to buff leveling. They're dialing back some of the nerfs that they were going to do to solo ops, and they're trying to raise up fire team ops instead. I think they said they wanted bonus engrams to start dropping with a little more power, which I thought was a good move. They said raid and dungeon reward improvements. That's all related to like, hey, the dungeon and the raid are going to start dropping gear at higher levels. Again, things we kind of already knew. So I'm not going to dwell on this too much. And then I'm also not going to really dwell on like Ash and Iron because we're literally about to go play it. But they showed off a couple of things here, trying to bring weekly stuff back. We have lost the concept of a weekly cadence in the game. We've had a weekly cadence for so long. With Edge of Fate, they were like, no more weekly. Like, you can just do anything all the time that you want. Like, it doesn't matter. I think people have come to somewhat miss some of the weekly, like, it's fun to log into the game and see like a fresh batch of rewards just like refreshed and ready to go. And it's like, we're gonna do this and this and this and this. I think this is a good move. And so they're bringing back some weekly stuff. They are the conquests that were one time only. Those are now going to be repeatable. I think they said that they are like the repeat functionality is enabled, and they're gonna update the rewards sometime soon, I believe is what they said. So those are gonna be repeatable. They're obviously not gonna drop as many rewards as they did on, the very first completion that you did of them, because they were dropping, an insane amount of items and power upgrades and all that. So I wasn't really expecting them to have that same level of intensity in terms of the rewards, but they are going to be repeatable. And then we have like this screen here, which is kind of meant to, I think, kind of replace like your typical bounty pickups. It kind of looks like we'll log into the game and we'll kind of see this screen. It's like the seasonal hub screen. I mean, it literally is the seasonal hub screen. It looks like it's just getting a big update with your dailies and your weeklies. And then we have these active orders where it's like, they're kind of these lower tier bounties that you're used to, right? And then they said every once in a while, hey, like a legendary version might pop up, like one out of every, I don't know, 10 bounties you do, maybe one's a legendary, and then maybe one out of every 25 you do is an exotic or something like that. Yeah, this is not, it's not final, but it looks relatively final. Like if this was the final screen, it wouldn't surprise me. So then, yeah, like, I don't know, one out of every 25 or like whatever the number is gets you an exotic level active order, which would get you some more rewards. So you're having more of these like, smaller to medium level objectives in order to go complete on top of your dailies and your weeklies. But this is stuff that's already in the game, right? So yeah, I think bringing some of that weekly cadence back is good. I feel like they splashed on like weekly legacy raids and dungeons. Like they literally just pointed this note out, and then I don't feel like we got a whole lot other than the fact that we have Pit of Heresy, Warlord's Ruin, and friggin' Galaron Duality. Each are gonna have like their own sort of like dungeon layer, which is like, I think you're just doing one of the encounters from each one of those dungeons, and that's like, I think they said a pinnacle activity. But otherwise, I don't know how much they mentioned raids. They mentioned wanting to bring in rad content, but not with updated specific rad rewards. Okay. Said adding weekly dungeon raids power rewards, but the gear being reprised takes a while. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a very no-brainer move to like, to me, I feel like it would be feasible to be like, hey, we're going to update the raids. One raid per expansion. We're updating the loot. We're making them tiered. We're giving them set bonuses, and you can use it to level once every. And then you can like let's say it's VOW. They update VOW, and then for the next 6 months, VOW gets you powerful stuff. And then 6 months later, it's like, all right, we're updating Deepstone, and now Deepstone's updated with its gear and this and that, and now Deepstone counts once a week per character, right? That is something that I would eventually love to see, but I understand it, like something like that takes a while. This is also coming with Renegades. All exotic weapons and armor are now featured gear. This was a pretty big one. I know people are very not crazy about the featured gear stuff. Bungie is rolling back a lot of the featured gear stuff, starting with all exotics are featured gear. You do not need to worry about any sort of like build crafting worries when you're going into some kind of activity, right? The biggest thing for featured gear, honestly, is probably the exotic class items, because they're so attached to an entire subclass. Not being able to like use prismatic with an exotic class item is kind of annoying. So now they're just like, screw it, all exotics are featured gear. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And they're also sunsetting the featured gear score bonus, which is like the thing in the portal where the more featured gear you're using, the higher your score bonus is. They're just ditching that altogether. Yes, I know everybody hates featured gear, and I assume at some point eventually they're just going to completely ditch this feature, but for now they are dialing back a lot of the featured gear stuff to make it more accessible to do some things, or less annoying, right? Like if you have a build that you're using that doesn't feature a featured exotic, then you just have to like completely change your build, and that can just like, dude, I want to play on my stasis build. Like, just let me play on the stasis build, right? Enhance legendary weapon tiers in Shadow and Order. Shadow and Order is the mid-season update. Like, we're about to have Ash and Iron. Shadow and Order is the mid-season update for Renegades. That's going to be in January, February, March, beginning of March. They're making it so you can enhance legendary weapon tiers. So they said, like, hey, you get like a tier 1 drop. You know, tier 1's kind of like, whatever, but it has the role that you want. You are going to be eventually able to upgrade it to a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. I was about to say tier 6, but that doesn't exist. So you're going to be able to take these lower tiers and through some sort of system and currency, which they didn't really give a whole lot of insight to, because I mean, they said they're like actively building this feature. You're going to be able to upgrade your weapon tiers. And I'm a little 50-50 on this personally, because like part of me is like, oh, that's kind of cool, because like there's been a lot of loot that I've gotten in the earlier parts of like leveling where I'm like, this is a good roll, but like I know I'm gonna get like a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 version of this thing. So like it'd be cool to like not immediately have to throw that away. But then the other side of me is like, well, if you want the highest tier gear, like you really should be pushed into the higher tier activities, and you should have to like actually work for it. You should actually have to do the hard things in the game to get the best items in the game, right? I think if they do something where as long as you're participating in stuff that would normally be dropping you tier 5, and then you get some kind of a currency that allows you to upgrade, like something like that would be okay to me. I would not want this currency to just come from like whatever the hell activity, and then like you can just get to tier 5 loot in an incredibly easy way, right? Like I'm guessing it's gonna maybe come from like, maybe you got to dismantle a certain amount of things, right? And you get some sort of dismantle currency from tier 5 stuff. Or maybe it's like, hey, upon completion of a thing where you would normally get a tier 5, we're going to take your weapon and we're just going to upgrade it. Like you slot it in somewhere and it's like, okay, instead of giving me loot, take this weapon and upgrade its tier based on the score at the end that I got. Something like that. I don't want to see tier 5, tier 4 gear devalued in this way by just like, you just buy the currency off of a vendor after you get level 20 on your weekly stuff, and then you can just upgrade whatever to tier 5. Like, I would not want that. I got a whole bunch of other things that I would love to talk about with weapon tiers, like, you know, speed running solo ops Caldera in 3 minutes, doing the easiest thing possible, getting you tier 5s. Like, doesn't exactly sit super well with me, but that's like a whole conversation for another completely other conversation. They're pausing non-critical nerfs and balance changes. They're just like, hey, if it's not like really affecting the game that brutally, we're just gonna like hold. You know, I think an example of something that they said was critical was like, you know, hey, if Titans are like going around 2-punching raid bosses, yeah, that's a critical nerf, and we're gonna make that happen. But like if something's, you know, 5% out of bounds, we're gonna hold on that, you know, which I think is fine. I think they said they're reverting the Queen Breaker nerf. They're reverting the Grand Overture changes. They were reverting the Stronghold changes. They're reverting the Chromatic Fire changes. Like all, I didn't even talk about those things in a video just because I saw them. I was like, everyone's gonna be mad and I can't deal with it right now. So I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because now people are like, oh, I didn't even know that was happening. So yeah, some things that were gonna happen, and then upcoming super and subclass buffs. I don't know if they give a ton on this. I don't think they give a ton on that. How are we feeling? I'm based on how things are right now, feel pretty good. How do I say this? I usually kind of come in with like lower expectations, and I think expectations were met or even like slightly exceeded. Yeah, cautiously optimistic. That's fair. I'm right there with you. Happy for the people who like it. It's not enough to bring me back. Totally understandable. Totally understandable. You know, I think a lot of people are underestimating how short of a time, like a month and a half has been. Like, we've only been in this for like we'll call it 2 months. Like next week it's 2 months, you know, so there's been a lot of discussion of like leveling and like, why have they changed this sooner and why didn't they do this and they do that? A month and a half is like barely anything in game development time. So I think they have been moving somewhat quick to make a lot of these changes. So that's been good. But sorry, let's Renegade specifically. Don't like the idea of dropping back to 200. Yeah, I don't think they mentioned anything about that. But I also think that with a lot of the leveling changes and with the fact that we're actually going to be on our normal 3-month cadence, it might not be as bad. I feel better than I thought I would, but I felt this way before. That's totally fair. That's totally fair. Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about the lightsaber. Yeah, there's an exotic lightsaber. They didn't really talk about it that much. You know, they just kind of showed that it exists, but they didn't talk about it much. I assume it's going to be another thing that we learn about in the coming weeks. Did they say it was exotic, or am I just making that up? I thought it would be just exotic because it's a freaking lightsaber. Happy they're fixing things. It feels like a repeat cycle. Bungie does dumb things. We complain, they fix it. Yeah. No, I absolutely get some of the fatigue there. They didn't say exotic. Okay. I think they did say it would be exotic. All right. So I don't know. If someone has a timestamp, let me know. Blaster was legendary. Okay. The concept of a plasma sword existing in Destiny is not too hard to believe. Yeah, that doesn't really like take me out of the experience. They said specifically feels like an exotic. Okay. New content looks fun. I wish Bungie stuck to their guns a bit more and didn't capitulate every time the community whined about something. Unfortunately, they are really not in a position to be able to like stand their ground on anything that they feel is right. They are in no position to be able to do that right now. As good of an idea as they think something might be, if people don't like it at right now, you have to just be like, okay, fine, we're not going to do it. They have no choice. It feels more like what we're typically used to getting. And I'm personally looking more for like, I'm looking for more day-to-day reasons to play other than Portal, like the activities coming in, you know, actually feeling like I'm playing something new. I'm participating with the game in like a more novel way than just like booting up the Portal or whatever. I think this has been needed for the game, like getting back to like, you know, that weekly cadence, right? Or like having that seasonal activity. Things like that. It looks cool, but there's absolutely some like still some underlying issues as well that I'm concerned about. It's some stuff that I want to talk about in a video that I've been writing. I wasn't able to get it out yesterday, so I was like, I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna give it some time until after Ash and Iron. I want to play around with some Ash and Iron stuff, and then I'll come out with that video, just kind of figuring out like, hey, you know, like this is cool and all, but I still feel like, you know, I'm running on a treadmill that I'm not sure I really want to run on right now. But that, again, conversation for another time, conversation for another video. Just focus on Renegades. Hope there's a card game since we saw Vex playing poker. I would be surprised, but like, you know, Destiny Rising has that has their card game, Shadow Shaper Duels, right? Which I think people have said it's literally just like Gwent or whatever, but like it's Destiny. So I knew them fixing the game was going to take major resources away from the game. Yeah, 100%. And now it feels like, okay, they did a bunch of huge revamps, like the stat changes and all those things. Now we can kind of see, hopefully, like, hey, now that you're maybe not making as many of these huge sweeping gameplay changes, you can focus more on like building content, right? And that's what I feel like we're kind of seeing right now with Renegades. Like even comparing Renegades to Edge of Fate, like what did Edge of Fate give us in terms of some sort of like repeatable thing other than repeatable story missions, like the Civ, which like nobody really participates in. And then compare that to Renegades, which is like, yeah, it's like 2 or 3 maps with like a bunch of different objectives in them and like an invasion optional mode and do and like it feels night and day. We don't have any like gameplay to look at, like non-marketing gameplay, really. The non-marketing gameplay we got was for Ash and Iron, which is out literally right now. But yeah, otherwise, like it looks good. I'm interested to see what they cooked up, but we're still 3 months away. I think it looks cool. And you know what? Like I'm more than open to Bungie being like, hey, we want to try some Star Wars looking stuff. I'm like, try it, man. I would rather Bungie try and like completely fall on their face with something that they think is novel than just like continuing to put out like very similar things over and over again and just playing it safe. Right? Like Edge of Fate kind of feel like it drifted in that direction, didn't really land, you know, didn't really stick the landing as much as I was hoping. This, they're just taking another shot, right? They're taking another shot with something, They got to try some stuff, because if they just stay with the status quo, it's just going to slowly just peter off into nothing. So trying some neat stuff. Let's see how it goes. That's really how I'm approaching this right now, with this being a one-off going for it. Yeah, I think some people were worried, like, oh, is this just going to be like Destiny's just going to be Star Wars from now on? Like, or they're just going to like take things from other IPs and that's just going to be the future of Destiny? It's just a one-off thing, you know? I mean, as far as we know anyway, right? Like, maybe what if this does like so well, they're like, we're going to do it again. Like, that wouldn't surprise me either, right? If this ended up being super successful and people were like, do it more, then you might see them do more. But like, I'm taking this as a one-off experience. It's just gonna be a one-off thing, and then whatever the next thing that comes out is, we'll worry about it then, right? And honestly, like, if this ends up exploding and being awesome, and like they do another one, would that be so terrible? No, I don't think it would be. Although I guess it depends on how it's executed, right? So, I think that's it.